Hey everybody, welcome to Recommend or Refute. I am your host, Michael Dixon, and with me this week is John Garcia.
Hey, happy to be here. I heard Ryan had family to deal with. He had some kind of family thing.
Yeah, he's taken Fast 10 way too seriously, and now he cares about his family for some reason.
Can't believe he cares about his family more than this podcast.
He normally neglects his children and lets them fend for themselves, and now he's off parenting or some bullshit.
Should take a play from the run book and just kidnap his family to be on this podcast. I don't know what I'm saying.
I don't either. The run book? I don't even know what you're talking about, John.
I don't know. We should take a run from the playbook. How does football work again?
The playbook? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. John, what did you watch this week that you would like to share with us?
So I watched just this little indie movie. I don't actually know if it was an indie movie or not. It was a thriller from 2021. It's a Swedish thriller, I believe, called Knocking.
Undrar om det är du som knackar.
Knackar? Nej. Vad kan jag hjälpa dig med?
Hallå?
The premise of this movie is a woman leaves a psychiatric ward after she's had a nervous breakdown. It's not really clear what happened to her.
Okay.
And she moves into an apartment and starts hearing a knocking on her ceiling. She's not sure where the knocking's coming from, and she tries to figure out what it could be, who it is, any of these things, and comes to the conclusion that there's somebody in danger that needs her help. And as the whole movie progresses through its 78-minute runtime, we discover that maybe there is something sinister going on in this apartment. This movie, the story is kind of played through. The moment that you watch it, you know exactly what you're watching and you know what some of the beats are. I will say there are certain twists where you're like, is that going to happen? I don't know. And the movie tries to get ahead of you on the curve here and there. But overall, I felt like the 78-minute runtime wasn't enough. I felt like it ran out of steam and it forced a lot of twists to happen.
Oh, interesting.
But from a technical perspective and the way that it's shot and the cinematography, I thought of like Mean Streets.
That's some high praise.
Am I thinking of Mean Streets or am I thinking of Who's Knocking My Door when I think of the drunk camera?
No, Mean Streets is the one where the camera is strapped to Harvey Keitel.
That's the one.
Walking around the
bar. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yes. I thought of that shot in Mean Streets because that's used a lot here to express the claustrophobia and sort of psychosis she feels like she's undergoing. There's sort of like a gaslighting theme that's played with here where a lot of the characters that live in her apartment are men and they all seem to they think that she's being hysterical, this main character. And
so she has male roommates who think she's crazy.
Not even roommates, just like flat, like, neighbors. And they all are like, it's one of those things where I felt like this movie had the same problem that Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss had, which is
not the Invisible Man with Claude Rains.
Not that one. No, not where he goes fucking apeshit for different reasons. Yeah, like I felt like there was this disconnect at times where the character did things that were outside of the character's logic for the sake of tone and the story. So, like in Invisible Man, Elizabeth Moss crawls into an attic to find a phone that's vibrating. Because why exactly would she put her in a compromising pose when she's got like this abusive boyfriend she knows is already doing all this shit? It's the same thing in Knocking where like this woman devises that there must be a conspiracy. She becomes committed to it and is like, I know this man is harboring somebody in his flat. I know that he has a woman somewhere in here probably who's like chained or something. She becomes so committed and fixated on that after having her nervous break that she completely ignores the optics of people thinking that she might be crazy and doesn't try to work around that or build up evidence to it. And it really frustrated me. And maybe that's just a me problem. Maybe my logic is off on this. But when I watched it, I appreciated the cinematography because when she got really frantic, the camera got closer and closer to the point where like you were just in her headspace. Like there's no way to be there with all these other characters without experiencing what she's experiencing. And I felt like that was great, a good conveyance of it.
Interesting.
But anything outside of that, where she's trying to get the bad guy, figure out who this person is who's got somebody chained in the room, it felt really rushed. It felt like it wasn't done in a very polished way. And the movie ended in a pretty weak like conclusion where it literally felt like the director and writer threw up their hands and just said, yeah, okay, it is what you thought it was. And they just fucking like let everything play out the way it was going to. And I was like, oh, that's not satisfying for me. Not at all. But like from an audio perspective, sometimes things like the Foley was really well done. They had like these kind of creepy, tense moments that just audibly sucked you into it. And then from a visual perspective, they really got me into her delusions and guessing if things are real or not at times. At other times I was still like, I think that the plot's going to end this way. And it did. So, yeah, it was kind of like middle of the road for me. Sasha fell asleep halfway through and wondered what happened. She was not willing to go back and watch it. She just wanted me to tell her. And that kind of says enough about the movie is like, yeah, it's probably what you thought it was. I'm interested to dig into more that the director's done. If this is something that they're trying to experiment with. Frida Kempf is the director, who's done a few other films before it. But I think like the most recent was something in like 2016. So I don't entirely know what else Frida Kempf is trying to do, if there's any style that she's trying to go for, but I was like, it made me interested in the people behind it. I would hesitate to recommend it. I don't think that I would recommend it. Because it just doesn't tell any story that's really new. It's cool to see from a technical perspective, but I would have to say I refute Knocking.
Oh, interesting. I wasn't expecting that. It sounds like, at least visually, it's interesting. And it being that it's only 78 minutes, I would think that could sustain a story like that.
I was so, it's the same thing with Invisible Man, where I wouldn't recommend Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss either, for the exact same reason that I was just so frustrated with the hypocrisy of the character logic that I just couldn't get past it. Like even with the visual tones and like the really cool technical achievements in it, I just was like, no, past this point, this movie becomes, it contradicts itself. And I don't like that. That's maybe my one weird hang up in recommending a movie is if a movie starts to contradict itself. Like, don't get me wrong, I watch a shit ton of schlock and all those movies don't know what they want to be, so they can't contradict themselves, in my opinion. They're just already so off the wall. But this one did very careful work at the beginning to lay this foundation that she'd just gotten out of, psychiatric treatment. She was very aware of that, just like an Invisible Man. Elizabeth Moss just gets out of a bad relationship. She's very cognizant of that. And both of these characters stray from that path and totally forget that when they're under duress, rather than remembering what they supposedly claim they remember. And I was just like, it feels like you're trying to do something to elicit an emotion from me rather than to endear me to the character and really get me to feel it through them. So
yeah. Interesting. Two things came to mind when you were describing the movie, given that you were saying that like maybe she's crazy and she keeps hearing this beating, and also the camera zooming in on her and you kind of experiencing her perspective sound like a cross between Telltale Heart and Mother by Darren Aronofsky. I don't know if have you seen Mother?
I have never finished Mother, surprisingly. I don't know.
I really liked Mother. It's upsetting and a lot of people don't like it, but it sounds like that kind of, like in that movie, the camera is on, like right on Jennifer Lawrence the entire time, and you're like unclear if what you're seeing is like her emotional reaction to what's going on or her interpretation of what's happening, or if it's what's actually occurring. And it creates this really heightened atmosphere throughout the movie that I think works really well.
Yeah. I've been meaning to go back and watch Mother. Darren Aronofsky is hit or miss with me, but it's one of those ones that's a little bit more out there and metaphorical, and I'm down to watch it. So I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? It's not Noah.
Yeah.
I would give this my time of day for sure. Yeah.
Is there that Telltale Heart idea? Is that like going on in this? Or
actually, yes, that is one of those roots in this Knocking is whatever her traumatic past is. I'm not going to spoil it. something about it has left her guilt-ridden, and she feels compelled to try to figure out what the knocking is and get to the bottom of it, because she, in her past, failed to save something or someone and wants to right that wrong, basically. And that factors into her character arc. If you want to watch this movie, I'd say go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. I just
John
don't
is
recommend
not going to come to your house and reprimand
That's
you.
right.
if
I'm
you
not going
try
to
watch
recommend you
this
for doing it.
movie.
If you tell me in a conversation, yeah, I watched Knocking, even though you refuted it, John, I won't be like, oh, you did that? But we'll probably both share a beer, share a Corona over the. No, we won't.
Do you want to finish this one over here, John?
No, thank you. I'm fine.
No, you still got some over there.
We'll probably both commiserate over the same grievances of this movie. That's my guess. But yeah.
Cool. I'm going to talk about a new movie that I saw in theaters a couple days ago called The Starling Girl.
Dear Lord, I want to reflect your holiness. Come into this space and fill it with your spirit. Amen.
I noticed that the bra that you chose is visible through your dress. Oh, teachable moment.
Hey, thank you. We try to be very conscious, but things slip. Ben Taylor asked your dad about courting you.
I've never really talked to Ben.
17's the time to start thinking about these things.
Lord, I know I've given into lustful thoughts and actions that take my focus away from you and onto me. I know that's wrong.
What were you doing there? You cannot tell anyone right now, okay?
This premiered at South by 2023, and I tried to go see it, and I wasn't able to get in. It was a pretty popular movie at the festival, and not all the times worked out well for me, and I wasn't able to get to it. But I saw it a couple days ago and really enjoyed it. It stars Eliza Scanlon, who, John, you know from Sharp Objects. She was in the 2019 Little Women also, so some people may know her from. She plays the sick sister. I don't remember her name, but the one that's always sick. But I think she's a really great young actress, and I always enjoy stuff that she does. So I was wanting to check this out. I didn't really know much about it going in, other than it got a lot of buzz at South by, and that it had gotten pretty good reviews, and that Eliza Scanlon was starring in it. It's written and directed by somebody named Laurel Parmet. I'm not sure, kind of what else she has done. Looking back at her filmography, I don't really recognize much of her other films, but really enjoyed The Starling Girl. It is about a small southern community that is very, very Christian, probably Southern Baptist, and it creates a very accurate atmosphere of what it is like to be a teenager in a Southern Christian church environment, where the whole town is going to church every Sunday, and then there are all these expectations around what you were supposed to do as a young person. Eliza Scanlon's character is 17 years old. Her name is Jem, short for Jemima, Jem.
Okay.
Jem Starling, hence the title, The Starling Girl. And she's being pressured to date the pastor's son. And the pastor has called Jem's father and said that, hey, my son wants to court your daughter. And it's very weird and formal. And I've not been a part of this type of thing, but I know that this kind of shit happens in this environment where it almost feels like an arranged marriage.
Fucking patriarchy.
And it's a very formal courting process where you only date for the purpose of marriage, and that,
you date for the purpose of mate.
Yes, exactly. And they're like these 17-year-old kids that their parents are pushing them to get married. She doesn't really seem that interested in it, but she doesn't necessarily verbalize that to anyone, because there are ramifications for stepping outside of the lines of what the church and your family wants you to do in this type of community. She really loves dancing. She's on there's a kind of a dance troupe at the church that does worship song dances, kind of slow, graceful dances with flowing gowns that are, nothing that would be deemed inappropriate whatsoever. She seems to really be into that, and she wants to dance, but it's kind of frowned upon in the community to really pursue that beyond the church setting. And she meets one person who is actually interested in her pursuing her goals of being a dancer, who is the youth pastor and the main pastor's oldest son, not the one that he is trying to get her to date. He has just returned from a mission trip to Puerto Rico, and everybody thinks he's kind of weird because he's been hanging out at this church in Puerto Rico, and he has some like different ideas about Christianity and worship being outside of the typical like Southern American Christian culture. And so he's kind of like having trouble fitting back into society. He's played by Lewis Pullman, who is Bill Pullman's son.
Wow.
Yeah.
The president of the United States, Bill Pullman?
Exactly.
Oh my God.
And he was really good in this. I've seen him in some other things before. He's in Top Gun Maverick.
All right.
He plays like that nerd in Top Gun Maverick.
Okay.
You know, who,
I could see it.
But you know, in this case, he's the older, mid-20s youth pastor who's in a loveless marriage, and Jim Starling starts to take a shine to him, and he starts to take a shine to her, and they begin kind of hanging out and having a romantic relationship, which, unclear what the legal age of consent is in this town or state that they're in. We don't really necessarily know where this is set, but it creates this weird tension as the viewer, because you're like, these are the two characters who don't fit in this town, and they have found each other, and that's cool, and they need to like be able to find other people who don't buy into everything that this town is pushing and all the like very strict Southern Christian ideology. But she's 17 and he's like mid-20s and he's married, and so it's like a weird tension where like you kind of want them to have a connection, but you don't want them to have a connection as well, because it feels a bit predatory at the same time. But both of those characters are just really well rounded and really great, and you care a lot about both of them, and they do such a good job of crafting like exactly what it feels like to be in a Southern Baptist youth group, and how everybody says the right things, but nobody really wants to. Everybody's fucking 17 and horny, right? But like they're all saying the right things and going along with what the church has to say. There's so much judgment going on, everybody judging everybody for like not being holy enough. And I thought it just created a really interesting atmosphere. And the story that plays out with these two characters, I thought was really great. And I really enjoyed it. I think Eliza Scanlon and Lewis Pullman were both really good young up and coming actors. I'm excited to see what they do from here. So
yeah, that sounds it reminds me, it's weird because it triggered this other synapses in my brain that reminded me of Juno in a way.
Oh, okay.
Where it's just like, oh yeah, there's like a girl who's kind of outcast because of her current status, and she meets a guy who is married and has all these dreams and aspirations, and has chosen a different path in life that like compels him forward, and they find a relationship, although that has a tragic ending to it. I don't know what this one does.
I mean, it's not going to end well.
Yeah,
right?
obviously
Like,
that can't in that kind of environment. I've seen what is that documentary? Jesus Camp, which is, I think that's a telling thing. I don't know. I just feel like that's what any kind of evangelical or Baptist kind of upbringing is going to root up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's fascinating from a character standpoint. Like, what is the perspective here? Like, how does the cinematography play into it? I'm kind of curious how like intimate the shots are, or our time with the characters are. Do we have any moments apart from Jim, or is it?
So most of the movie is on Jim, and you're following her and seeing the world from her perspective. You get moments where you kind of get the perspective of other characters. Obviously Lewis Pullman's character, you feel a lot of what he's going through as they're kind of, showing these two characters are the ones who kind of feel ostracized and they want something else in life. Jim's mother is like a very fundamentalist, very strict Christian woman. Her father is a really interesting character, played by Jimmy Simpson,
Jimmy Simpson.
This guy.
Jimmy Simpson from fucking Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and like he was in Stay Alive, which is
Westworld, Black Mirror.
Yep.
He's been in a lot of things. He has a recognizable face.
I love Jimmy Simpson. He's great.
He was incredible in this in a supporting role, but he plays her father who is relapsing into alcoholism.
Damn.
As we see it over the course of the film. And he, as a young man, was in a secular band in Memphis that was, playing secular country music and seems to really pine for that era of his life, but rationalizes himself now saying, well, I found your mother and I found Jesus and I needed to get rid of those aspects of my life because they were kind of pulling me down and I needed to do this and this was the right thing to do. But he's clearly not happy with his life and he feels stagnant. And, Jem will catch him in the garage listening to his old albums and getting shit-faced. And
damn,
it's clearly creating issues in his marriage. And, his wife is very fundamentalist and very all about appearances, right? And she's like, if Jem tries to bring it up with her mom, like, hey, I saw Dad drinking last night. It seems like he's not in a good place. She'll just like ignore it and act like it's not happening.
Yeah.
Right. And like she just wants to make sure that no one outside of the house realizes that her husband is an alcoholic and is having these problems.
Damn.
And so like he's a really great character too, provides a lot of context for kind of her desire to have a different life and go do something else outside of being a Christian wife and mother and what is expected of her to do.
Yeah. Man, that sounds fucking great. Like, as depressing as that sounds, it sounds fucking great. I honestly feel like my heart would be in that movie. Like, just watching it.
Yeah.
I'd be very into it.
I mean, watching the movie, I was like, I'm not from a small town like this, but like, I know this,
I know
this
those same
atmosphere
kind of
that they're
people.
creating. I know people like this. I have been in this type of environment in like a Baptist youth group, and I know what's going on here. And I felt like the movie felt so true. And I don't know what the writer director's background is, but I would imagine that she has some intimate familiarity with these types of settings.
Yeah, I'm curious. So obviously you're recommending this, right? I mean,
yes, I'm recommending this. No, this is one of my favorite movies of the year so far. It's a new movie. John Wick 4 is still my number one movie of the year so far, but Starling Girl is number 2.
Give me the movie where John Wick falls in love with a preacher and we'll talk about it.
Hey, John Wick 5. It's a team up to fight the devil.
I'm very curious because I know that we share a mutual appreciation for another movie that's about fundamentalist religion and discussion of it, which I know you. I've been watching your letterbox. I know you watched Master Gardener recently.
I did watch Master Gardener recently.
And Paul Schrader also did a religious film with First Reformed.
I've decided to keep a journal to set down all my thoughts and the simple events of my day. I will keep this diary for 1 year, and at the end of that time, it will be destroyed.
It's been a while since we've talked. Even a pastor needs a pastor.
Did you see the doctor?
You need someone to take care of you.
You believe in martyrdom, Reverend? The saints of God, the early Christians who wouldn't renounce their faith.
My hands shake as I write these lines.
Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
Can God forgive us for what we've done to this world?
Who can know the mind of God?
How do you see First Reformed stacking? I don't want to try to compare them, obviously. They're totally different films. First Reformed has a different vibe than the Starling Girl does. But
very much so. I mean, I absolutely love First Reformed. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. That had like a profound impact on me when I saw it. Just like kind of shook me to my core. First Reformed is very much a Paul Schrader film. It's very Bressonian. It's very bleak look at Christianity, where Ethan Hawke's character is going to desperate, violent ends to try to solve his problems that have been created by the church, and feeling very helpless and how to get out of them. The Starling Girl is also like pointing a finger at the hypocrisy of the church and the problems that it creates for young people in particular, and the confusion and things that can cause there. it's not like Schrader's movies, you know, like at the end, there's going to be some kind of crazy violence and they're going to punch you in the face. And that's kind of how they crescendo and finish. And this movie doesn't do that, right? It's more of a personal story between these characters and how they deal with these issues in their small town. I mean, there's definitely like shit hits the fan, right? Like eventually this can't end well, this relationship between this youth pastor and this 17-year-old. You know, it's clearly not going to go well, but you know, it's not like explosive like a Paul Schrader movie. It's a little more kind of grounded in, you know, okay, this happens, now it's out there, what do we do about it? And I think it does that really well. And you know, I love Paul Schrader films and I love First Reformed, and I think the way that movie crescendos and ends is incredibly powerful, and I love that. This is not that, but it's also a very, you know, powerful and interesting way to approach this kind of dynamic where you're looking at the hypocrisies and the problems of the church and trying to reconcile those against the world around it.
Gotcha. Wow. Well, I'm gonna have to check this out. Yeah, just you sold me on it, man. You sold me. It sounds really fucking great. It's still in theaters right now.
It is as of like today. I think I don't know how much longer it will be. It was. I actually the only place I was able to see it was at Alamo Lakeline, and I happened to be up in Round Rock for an eye doctor appointment, and I was like, oh, I'll just go over there. But yeah, like it was kind of out of the way, so I don't know how much longer it'll be in theaters. I would imagine it'll be streaming pretty soon.
It'll be streaming soon, yeah. On Max with the fucking list of creators instead of director writers and shit. Whatever the fuck they're doing.
Oh my God. Yeah, let's take away the one part of the brand that people recognize. Remove the HBO, keep the Max.
Perfect sense.
Yeah. But yeah, and I did see Master Gardener this weekend. Like I said, I love Paul Schrader. I think his 3 recent films have all been very interesting. I actually saw an interview with Schrader at, I think it was New York Film Festival last year after Master Gardener premiered. He was talking about the last 3 movies that he's made: First Reformed, The Card Counter, and Master Gardener.
Yeah.
I think they've gotten progressively worse. I absolutely loved First Reformed. Really liked The Card Counter. Liked Master Gardener. It was good. Like I would recommend it, but it wasn't. I don't think it was good as the previous 2. But he talked about how I think the programmer asked him, like, you know, your recent movies have been, you know, very low budget, but it almost seems like you've achieved some sort of freedom through that. And he said, you know, yeah, it's like, it's interesting, you know, because of the technology now with digital cameras, we can shoot very quickly. I can shoot a movie in 20 days and like cut the budget in half on what it would have been with film cameras and all these other things. And he's like, I always wanted to make just like a straight up Robert Bresson kind of movie, but I could never convince people to fund it. And so I wasn't really making movies exactly how I wanted to. And now that I can shoot things digitally, I can make shoot a movie in 3 weeks and edit it on my own time. Like, you know, I can actually afford to make the movies that I want to make. And, you know, these movies aren't going to break the box office, but they'll make enough money to pay the investors back. And like that, I just really want to be able to make the movies I can make and, you know, not have investors mad at me. And like, you know, he's able to do what he wants now. And like, he's in his like fucking late 70s at this point. Like, but he's like, now I can finally do what I've always wanted to do. Like there's something like really beautiful about that I really appreciate. And, you know, I've seen, there are definitely Schrader movies that I still need to see. I haven't seen Mishima, and I haven't seen The Comfort of Strangers, and some others that I definitely need to see. But I've seen a lot of his films, and his recent 3 really feel like what he has always wanted to do and what has been driving him since he wrote the script for Taxi Driver. And like the film that Scorsese made is incredible, but it's not the exact Paul Schrader vision, right? It's a little bit more maximalist than what Schrader would want to do. He's just so minimalist and pared down. And Master Gardener is good. I think like it's definitely worth checking out. But, you know, First Reformed, just fucking masterpiece. And The Card Counter, I thought was really, really great as well. So, but I love seeing like, you know, this absolute giant of cinema is like, now I can finally do what I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's heartwarming, and it's also tragic to me, but it's
It
also
is,
one of those
yeah.
like curmudgeon tragics where I'm like, oh, well, how dare you not give Paul Schrader this money to do these things when like I know that there's a whole fucking financial backing that has to stand up and people have to get their money, and because it's fucking capitalism, fucking you have to get your pay. But at the same time, like you got Ari Aster making Beau is Afraid over here, and Paul Schrader's like, now that I have digital, I can cut the budget in half. And it's like Roger Deakins has been saying that for so many fucking years about getting different shots and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, but it sounds like Schrader's in his happy place, and I love hearing creators who are able to go. That's my one thing. I think I found my weakness in film, and what I love most. It's not things that make me like happy from I watch it and it's entertaining to me. It's watching somebody else's indulgent fantasy. Like obviously I love watching schlock, and schlock is mostly like people trying to get money out of some fucking industry. But then I'll watch the occasional, fucking get even champagne and bullets. And I'm like, good for you. You fucking did it. Or I'll watch First Reformed to be like, hell yeah, Paul Schrader. And, obviously all of Tarantino's films I fucking love. So I'm just like, you're doing what you love. You're getting to put your voice out there. That's what film should be for me. And I love seeing it. It just makes me sad that Paul Schrader has to slash the budget in half. I'd love to see a big budget Paul Schrader film where he just gets to go fucking ham. That'd be amazing.
I mean, honestly, I don't know that he needs.
He doesn't need
that.
it.
Like, I don't think First Reformed could be made better by more money. I don't
Not
think the
at
card
all.
counter could be made better by more money. And honestly, I don't think Master Gardener can be made better by more money. I'm not a big Joel Edgerton fan. I think if they had a different actor in that role, it might have been a better movie. Sigourney Weaver is great in it. But I think he can do what he wants to do with a pretty small budget. Like, I would love to see him be able to do that on 35 millimeter.
Yes.
If he wanted to do that, but it's not where we are. And like, Bresson, I love Robert Bresson. His movies are incredible, like just very groundbreaking in their style and what he was doing. But he was only making like 2 movies a decade because like, these aren't mass appeal things. Like they are, interesting art pieces that are trying to break new ground in what movies can do. And like, you're just not going to get a huge return on those for the most part. It's like, The Man Escapes was a pretty big hit. And then other than that, pretty small potatoes and the money he was pulling in. So like, I understand why people aren't.
It makes sense.
Running to Paul Schrader, like, let me give you money to make one of these.
Yeah, exactly. I understand it for sure. It's just one of those things where I'm just like, anytime I can see a creator who's like, oh, they have, when they have to talk about how much they have to do the budget in order to do what they love, I'm like, that sucks. I really wish you could get the budget to do what you love, but I'm glad that you're able to make it work. Like there's trade-offs to it. But it's good to know that he has not been crushed by the industry. He's still been able to kind of fly free and do what he wants to do. And he feels like he's doing it to the best of his abilities. So it's like, cool. Way to go, Paul Schrader. I got to check out Master Gardener. I got to check out the card counter still. I know you recommended
you haven't seen the card counter? Oh, you should watch the card counter.
Not seen the card counter.
One thing that I think is really cool about what Schrader is doing recently is like his recent movies are all very similar, right? They're about a man in a room getting mad about something and, going and doing something about it. But he uses that story to attack different problems in society, right? And like with First Reformed, he is pointing out the hypocrisy of the church, and he is drawing attention to climate change. With the card counter, he is pointing the finger at the American military and the way we treat our veterans and torture programs overseas through the guise of a card player, right? It's like he's able to take, and that's kind of, he talked about in the Master Gardener interview I watched, like kind of how he starts to come up with his scripts, and he's like, well, I know I like this format, and like I need an occupation and an idea in society that I can kind of criticize. And Master Gardener is like, the guy's a gardener. Obviously, it's a Master Gardener. He works on this big estate. I'm hesitant to say what the cultural idea is that the movie is going toward. It's in the trailer, but I didn't see the trailer, and when I watched the movie, it was like a shocking reveal that this is what was happening. So I think like if you like Paul Schrader, you should just go see Master Gardener and see what you think about it. And like I said, I don't think it's quite as good as his other ones, but I think it's very good. But I like that he's able to take this similar story that he's written so many times and make it feel fresh every time he writes a new one and makes a new movie, casts a new actor, comments on a different area of American society and how we need to reform ourselves and try to get better. And his characters are usually not good at actually solving problems, right? Like they are tragic characters who end up not coming to a good end, but sometimes they do. But I think that's just interesting. Like, Schrader seems passionate about pointing out the big problems in society, and like maybe they're too big to solve. Maybe we can't actually come up with
too big for one person
change
to solve, maybe, or
right.
Who fucking knows?
Yeah. And so, but I think it's fascinating to see what he's been doing late in his career, using the story framework that he loves and writing it in ways that feel new and interesting every time. So,
yeah. Well, there you have it, everybody. We recommend all of Paul Schrader's work.
Yes. Anything Paul Schrader has done, watch it. But I am recommending the Starling Girl.
There you go. Yes, that's right.
After that long tangent about Paul Schrader.
I recommend, I've recommended First Reformed. I've seen that one. I love that one. I've shared it a few times.
It's so good. One of my all-time favorite movies. The best thing Ethan Hawke has ever done. He is fucking incredible in that movie. Yeah.
God. I gotta go watch it again. I gotta watch the Starling Girl, and I gotta watch First Reformed again.
And the Card Counter.
And the Card Counter and the Master Gardener. Fuck it. I'll watch Taxi Driver. All right. I'll start the Scorsese kick after that. Who fucking knows?
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us this week. John, any parting thoughts for the listeners at home?
No, we got just a ton of recommends. Like the last recommender review, we had a lot of recommends too. I mean, I refuted Knocking, but whatever. You were going to go watch the other stuff anyway.
Yeah. Honestly, Knocking sounded interesting to me the way you were describing it.
It is still interesting. It's just like I feel hesitant to recommend it. It was one of those things where I was like a little too frustrated with how it went down. But if you're like big into the technical aspects of film, it's a good time. I still think it was really interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah. Nothing else. I don't have anything else to add.
All right. I have been your host, Michael Dixon. With me, as always,
John Garcia.
And we're pouring out these Coronas for Ryan because we don't want to drink them. So
that's right. Yeah, pour it into your empty glass. Get the pouring sound.
Hold on.
Do it. That's for you, Ryan. That's for family. Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.